This conference will now be recorded.
First of all, just by way of errata notice, I reported in the last email that you needed a 30-day gap between your scheduling of your COVID booster shot and your flu shots. I'd been misinformed by a nurse, and it turns out not to be true. You do not need to wait 30 days between the two. In fact, you can have the injections on the same day. I now want to tell you about today's program. We have two people. We have Matt DeFerenti, the chair of the Arlington County Board, and then we have Jay Wynn following him to talk about the park bond issue. And those are our two items on today's agenda. Could I ask caller number one who just got on with their phone to identify themselves? Who is calling?
It's Craig.
Oh, Craig. Okay. I'm going to change your name.
Okay. I never know how it appears when I dial in rather than coming.
Yes, okay.
Well, I couldn't get connected on GoToMeeting for some reason.
Well, I apologize for that. All right. Well, you know, Matt has been a member of the county board now for what, about 3 years? And he's chair this calendar year, and he's been working on a lot of exciting things. He reported to some of them at the last ACDC meeting. So without further introduction, I give you Matt DeFerenti. The floor is yours, Matt.
Thank you, Bob, and it's good to be with you and all of you on this overcast day, but I feel as though there's challenges ahead for us as Democrats over the next 21 days. There's also the issues that we care about so much. I just want to provide a bit of an update on the county board's work over the last 3 or 4 months. I'm pretty sure, I do not know offhand the last time I joined you. I feel as though it was earlier this year, but it has been a whirlwind year. So I'll just describe the actions we took in July and September, and then give you my sense of where we are as a county on democratic ideals and what's at stake over the next few days through the November 2nd election. So in July, we took really big steps. We took the step of finally approving our collective bargaining ordinance, which will set a new relationship and collaboration with our employees. This is something that Democrats fought for in 2019, and because we were able to win the legislature, Arlington now, for the first time, has the authority to enact collective bargaining. We did so in a collaborative process. We worked through so many edits, and the county board directed the manager to work collaboratively at several points over the course of the negotiations. Frankly, we had a much more collaborative process than Alexandria, which is the one locality that had gone before us. And I also think we achieved an outcome that both will serve customer service and value our employees, which our people are our greatest resource within the county, and then employment, and also within our community. So that was a big step. We also enacted prevailing wage, which means that on contracts we have with entities for projects that we bid, every project above $250,000 must pay the region's prevailing wage. So that's another step forward for economic fairness and equity, in my view. We also, in July, and this took a third meeting, enacted our police oversight board, which was we did a lot of work on that, and that was the key issue at many different points was whether there would be subpoena power for this board, and we voted to create a board with subpoena power. There were many other pieces of the conversation that were where we agreed with our police practices group. I did personally, probably within the last week or two, I did about 4 separate meetings with the NAACP's Criminal Justice Committee to hear concerns and try to resolve. We did so on many of them, but not all of them. I'm very proud on balance of what we passed. I think it's going to serve Arlington well. 7, the applications for that are open now through November the 12th. 7 residents will be on that board, and 2 additional non-voting retired law enforcement experts. That doesn't mean they have to be, there's no strict definition of law enforcement, but there's a requirement that those 2 non-voting individuals have been retired for 3 years from work in a law enforcement related field. So the police oversight board is a huge step forward. We've also, those are big step forwards in July. Other big items traditionally, and in this case in August, we took that month without public meetings. We met once in closed session, and we continued on a lot of the work that we've been doing. In September, we took 3 steps. 3 key steps. There's a number of other actions we've taken. We changed our logo to reflect our whole community's priorities and ideals. The prior logo had been based on the Lee House, so named by Congress, which is the home with the pillars at the top of Arlington Cemetery. We felt it important to be inclusive. The new logo is a square that's shaped, it looks a little bit in some senses like a diamond, and that logo is a step forward. We also changed the name of Lee Highway to Langston Boulevard. Later this month, all the signs are going to be changed. And another big step we've taken is we put $2 million in a small business grant competition that is open now and will continue for the coming week and a half to be open for applications. These are grants that would go to businesses that have not received federal or state funding. And so we do think that those grants of $10,000, which go to businesses that have committed to be vaccinated first, and then to those who have already vaccinated all their employees, committed to vaccinating all their employees, and then last eligibility would be to businesses who make neither of those steps. I don't know that we would get to those businesses, but that's for the Arlington Economic Development to continue to work through. We passed a plastic bag tax of 5 cents at our September meeting. And so those are some of the 3 big actions, those most recent 3 from the Arlington County Board in September. We have been reaching out on immigration issues. We have a framework 2-page document that is a draft, and that we are going to continue to seek feedback on how we can make even more clear and tighten up a couple of areas so that Arlington County is not collaborating in any way with ICE except where the law requires it. So that is a step forward that builds on really a history of inclusivity from the board. You may recall in 2017, before I joined the board, there were numerous statements pointing out how we would not seek to be, we would not be tolerating any of former President Trump's intolerance on immigration. So those are steps. There's also this week, I'm keeping an eye very closely and have been engaged as appropriate on concerns regarding a fatality in our detention facility. And that happened last Tuesday. It actually occurred at a Virginia hospital center, but after an inmate had been found unresponsive in the morning, Mr. Clyde Spencer's passed away later that day. My thoughts are, and our thoughts as a board are with his family and friends. Beyond that, the authority for figuring out appropriately investigating that is been put to an independent regional group called the CERT team. And there's ongoing investigations are not something beyond that I can comment, nor can Parissa Dangani-Tafti, who is our Commonwealth's attorney, who has the legal authority for all criminal investigations in Arlington. She also cannot speak to that, but we did put out a joint statement along with Sheriff Arthur pledging full cooperation in the independent investigation. Just because I'm mentioning it doesn't mean that I actually know all the details, and I do also have that responsibility to not speak with respect to that. It also does not mean that I believe that there was, at the current time, it doesn't mean that we have evidence one way or the other as to what occurred, but we have to do a impartial and independent process, and that's what we're doing. So that is an update, big picture. I said I'd finish by sharing changing the name of Lee Highway to Langston Boulevard, enacting police smart, thoughtful, independent police oversight. Those are two issues that are just some of the examples of where, without a Democratic legislature in Richmond, a Democratic House of Delegates in Richmond, we would not be able to take the actions that we have taken that I believe are fully consistent and really help us implement the Arlington Democrats and Arlington Senior Democrats' priorities. So I'll stop there and take any questions.
Thank you so much for that overview, Matt. I'll take the privilege of the first question, and I want to raise my favorite pet project for the last 30 years, which is IRV. Do you want to give us an update? I know that the board, the electoral board, has done some work on this, and the county board is funding some work on this. We got a bill through the state legislature authorizing Arlington to do a pilot program on that. Do you want to tell us about that, please?
Sure. We had a work session on last week on this, and ranked choice voting and IRB. I'm blanking on the precise acronym. Sorry, Bob.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's instant runoff voting, which is the same thing as ranked choice voting. That's
right. My apologies for forgetting that. There's a work session that we had last week, a week ago Tuesday, on this, on both redistricting's implications for Arlington as well as ranked choice voting. It's an interesting work session. We learned some of the challenges with respect to implementation. For example, the state system for reporting results is not currently capable of doing IRB ranked choice voting. And even if it is, it would only be able to allow us to have 3 choices that would be listed over the coming year. There is a time there's some cost to this, and in 2025, some of our software would be renewed, and so the costs might be less if we held off until 2025. At least that's what Gretchen said. These are answers to her question, to our questions of her. I felt it important to do. I personally believe in ranked choice voting. I believe in them in primaries. I do have some question left. There are 2 different methods of how you count ballots, and one of them that we discussed on a week ago Tuesday concerns me. I think we want broad representation, but I want to be careful and think it through thoroughly. My personal view, and many may share it, some may not, is that part of the values underlying ranked choice voting is you get you could get a candidate that is more acceptable to a broader range of the electorate. I think that is important. I think positive campaigns are important, but I also think that accountability for your platform as a candidate is important as well. Think of it in this context. Once upon a time, I believed in the filibuster in the Senate. I no longer believe in the filibuster in the Senate. And for me, one of the ways of counting, I think it's called the Gary method. One of the ways of counting ranked choice voting could result in, it's mostly, I think, relevant and critical if you consider it in the general election context with respect to the year when currently 2 county board members run in the same year. And my personal interest is in the ideas that are at the heart and soul of the Democratic Party. In a year where 2 candidates run, the 20% of Arlingtonians who voted for Trump could, in my view, have an impact in the election. And I definitely feel a duty to serve them, but I don't feel as though enfranchising them further, I have to weigh that with respect to other priorities, like, positive campaigns can be good, but if I say something as sort of banal as I am for, remember back the healthcare debate, Republicans said, I'm for access to healthcare for everyone. Well, we all probably may remember that access without the ability to pay is a platitude that is not sufficient with healthcare as a right. So I think we're going to try to understand the implementation challenges and understand this Gary method of how to handle it when there are multiple choices on one ballot. And then we have to see a little bit about the costs. It's also, there'd be a huge education campaign for those outside of the Arlington Democratic Party on this. To be clear, I am 1,000%, 100% in support of ranked choice voting when we have to do caucuses. I wish that school boards under Virginia law were not caucuses, but instead primaries, but the law is what it is. And I do believe your party affiliation matters in school board races, having been an advocate on education and looking at the Loudoun School Board. So that is the party internal process for an endorsement. And I strongly believe then, and I believe in the process that led to Takis Karantonis' election last year, although I wish we had had the time and ability in the midst of the heart of the pandemic to get more voters enfranchised. So there's implementation follow-up. We as a board need to ask some additional questions of the registrar, but I felt it very important to have that first work session to start to get these issues discussed. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, I would just commend to you the hair system, which was used during the Allied occupation of Italy after World War II to elect multi-member districts in their governments, and has been used at Cornell University since 1970, again with both single and multi-person, multi-seat districts. And I'll get to you with that offline, but we do appreciate all you've done, and I certainly enjoyed serving with you on the Teller Committee, you and Herschel on the Teller Committee of several caucus elections. Who wants to ask the next question? Joe, do you want to ask a question?
Just a quick add-on. I voted early and was surprised to note that you didn't have to give a special reason for voting early. You just voted early. So just to make sure everybody knows that it's very simple and easy to vote early.
Thank you, Joe, so much for mentioning that. I worked for John Kerry in 2004, and voting early was, you needed no reason or excuse to vote early in Iowa at the time. and I worked there for him, and voting early puts votes in the bank so that Terry McAuliffe and Democrats can turn out the remaining votes we need to win. If we turn out, we win this election. But I think we're fighting gravity, because after Joe Biden's election, that's a real challenge to get the turnout that we need, and the polls are far closer than I would like at the gubernatorial level, and in state delegate races like Wendy Geditis and Josh Cole and Dan Helmer. I'm very nervous, and so I am trying to do my day job, but I am also every weekend. My parents and I are going to canvass on Sunday for Wendy Geditis, and so please vote early if you can. I know that many people love to go themselves to the polls on Election Day, and if you love it that much, I'm going to respect that. I just also know that it really helps, because you can volunteer if you've already voted, or you can, and it also removes some of the cost of the mail pieces and helps Terry and the team better target our resources to win. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Joe. One last thing, Bob, on ranked choice voting. The Civic Federation has asked us to delay consideration of ranked choice voting because they have that tiger group with a whole bunch of proposed reforms. And I think you know that, but I wanted everybody on the call to be aware of that. And that does not mean the Civic Federation, I respect their views, of course, and that does not mean it's certain that we would take up all of their suggestions or that the timing would be solely dependent on any one group, but it is a relevant factor that we're considering on ranked choice voting. So
Sure. Thank you for that.
Please,
Please,
I would
Joe.
like to ask just a quick question of where do you think reapportionment is going to come out, given the almost stalemate? And I remember Mark Levine's reasoning why we shouldn't have voted for the constitutional amendment.
Well, it appears as of last Friday that the system is broken. At least the commission is at a stalemate, and it doesn't impact county board members because we're all elected countywide, but it does impact our state delegates: Patrick Hope, Rip Sullivan, Alfonso Lopez, our candidate Elizabeth Bennett Parker. And so it definitely does impact, and then the Senate seats, it does impact those. I think that it's going to go to the Virginia Supreme Court, and I think we really better hope that there's, as I understand it, there's 2 or 3 judges who are Bob McDonald's appointments, who we are worried about are so partisan that they might not draft fair districts. But there's still 7 total justices, so I don't think we know exactly how it's going to turn out. I will feel a whole lot more comfortable once we win the November 2nd elections by turning out people, because that certainly, I believe, could have an impact as we decide this over the coming month and a half to 2 months or so. So I hope that helps. Bob?
Yeah. So Ann is the next questioner.
Thank you. I'm sorry I was late. I have a absentee ballot which I filled out last night and which I will put in a drop box today. But I noticed that there are 3 bond issues from the county on the ballot, and I was wondering if you could comment. 4? I only remember 3. Oh, okay.
They're 4, honestly.
I believe you. All right.
And we'll let Matt comment on them, but I do want to save the park one for Jay Wind, who's prepared to make a very detailed presentation after Matt makes the call.
Okay. All right. I would just like to hear about what, besides the park thing, that the county wants to do with these funds.
Sure, it's a good question. It's been a little time since I've looked at the individual questions. So there's parks, there's some infrastructure, which is stormwater related that that's part of it. And there's also, as there often is, there's school bond component. With respect to the school bond, that piece of it is a number of kitchens, 3 or 4 kitchens. It's a relatively scaled down bond. Same is true about our bonds, but some stormwater, some capital investments in streets, and relatively modest total amount compared with prior years. But I guess beyond that, I'd have to take another look and refresh my memory.
There's also our share of Metro, Matt. There's our share of Metro.
Sure. I did, of course, Parks, and Jay will cover that. I think that's a critical piece of things. With respect to Metro, there is Metro funding and for capital, and that is important because it's part of the share we pay that followed Ralph Northam's commitment to join Muriel Bowser and Governor Hogan. So, Metro is critical for our transportation. It is a difficult time for Metro. We're going to have to change the way Metro thinks. I'm on the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, and we're thinking about new models because for many of our parents, or many of us, federal employment meant going in on the orange line, and it's going to be a little different work schedule. So the keeping up in a state of good repair is something we didn't do for probably 2 decades, and Paul Wiedefeld has been catching up. So that's another component of what we need to be funding. But I apologize for not having more granular detail than that. I certainly, we keep our triple.
Conference will now be recorded.
So I think Herschel, you may be off. You may have a question.
Herschel dropped. Yeah, Herschel has a question. Do you want to talk, Herschel? Your microphone's open. Herschel?
Okay. Shoot.
You may want to. We can't hear you, but we can hear your background.
Matt, do you want to mute yourself for just 1 minute while Herschel states his question?
That was my fault. I couldn't figure out how to get off my iPhone, so I just turned it off finally. No, I just had a comment about that the judges are, this doesn't change what Matt said about the judges, but they're not appointed by the governor. They're elected by the legislature, and the Republican legislature is obviously no better than the governor. But when you mention that, just that's how they're chosen.
Thank
and the
you.
term is elected. So.
The point being that even though 3 were elected by the legislature during Bob McDonnell's term, there were other years when there was a Democratic governor and a Republican legislature where the results were just as bad.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Craig Hines, do you have a question?
Arlington was the only city or county in the state that voted against Amendment 1, which some of us saw to be the horror that it has turned out to be.
Yeah, so I mean, I did in the end vote against Amendment 1. It was, I think Craig you were earlier on than I was in seeing this, and it wasn't an as easy a vote as it might have been, but I'm glad that I did vote no on it at the time. So, you know, I feel as though we certainly have some work to do to try and address redistricting, and it's a frustrating and difficult situation. So,
Well, as a follow-up to that, Matt, when the Arlington board sort of gives their suggestions to the Arlington delegation, will that include further constitutional amendments on redistricting sometime in the future?
we have not. It's a good question. We are taking up on Saturday our legislative package. So, you know, we don't, in the draft that the staff report, we don't have items on redistricting in it, but it is a good question. And you know that we'll hear from residents on Saturday about this. And so I'll put a note here to check on whether redistricting might be something that we would want to mention. It's
Thank
so real-time unfolding that it's a little challenging. So, yeah.
Sure, but I bet I know where Craig is going to be on Saturday morning.
In bed.
Who else wants to ask Matt a question? Okay, well, if no one else does, I have another substantive question, which is how overall at a 10,000 foot level, how has Arlington fared financially under COVID, and how important is the next round of Build Back Better legislation? How important is that to Arlington?
So financially, we continue to be one of about, I think, 100 counties out of 3,000 in the United States that has a AAA bond rating. That's a reflection of our good fiscal stewardship over the years. It's also a reflection of the reality that we are one of the 5 or 6 wealthiest counties in the country. We have budget discussions that are coming next Tuesday and after that. So there's the fiscal year 23 budget, which is one challenge. We have ARPA money, American Rescue Plan money, is critical in our being able to meet our budget for the past year. But we're in decent fiscal shape. There are multiple parts to our revenue. One of them that's about 30% or 35%, depending on how you count it, of our overall revenue as a county is dependent on the values of residential properties. Those have continued to go well. We have a higher commercial office vacancy rate because the commercial markets have totally changed. But we do have, it is helpful that we're having, over time, we'll be having 4.9 million in square feet through the 2 Amazon buildings that are the one that's currently under the construction. So we're in good fiscal shape. There's work that I believe we need to do to become more equitable and progressive in terms of our tax system. I believe that it's really important that we invest our resources in the ideas that are about the Democratic Party of not equal. We can't guarantee equality of outcomes, but we should have equitable, equal, fair opportunities for everyone as they're working, growing up, getting an education, and trying to live the American dream. So we are in decent, we're pretty good fiscal shape. We're going to make some investments in our mental health and police officers, but we certainly are still feeling, because we lost 10 million in revenue this past year and will next year, of our hotel tax revenue. So we're not out of the woods. We're in pretty good shape. We certainly have more to do to invest in housing and schools and our environment, things that are critical pieces of the Democratic Party's ideas.
Steve, do you have a question?
I do. I think I saw this article this morning that Peter Rosolo shared from the Mercury, which is what, Richmond, that pointed out that Virginia was like 47th in the amount of state money that goes to schools. And as a result of that, the schools are more dependent on property tax, which of course is not regressive, or I'm sorry, it's regressive and not progressive. And I wonder if I make the suggestion that when you talk about your suggestions to the state legislature, you might take this up.
Yes. I'm really glad to see Terry McAuliffe talking about the need to increase teacher salaries. And we definitely need to invest more in our schools. So I'm glad you mentioned it. I think that it's covered, but I will double check as to our legislative package. So really appreciate the chance to be with you today. I do, unless there's one more quick question, I'll beg off. I have a 12:45 meeting.
I think that's appropriate. And again, you can go to the arlingtonva.us website to find out more about the county board, their agendas, their actions, and so on. And we do appreciate all that you're doing. We hope to see you this weekend on the campaign trail. And we want to thank you so much for spending time with us. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Bob, and thanks to each of you for continuing to work and fight for our ideas and our values. Thanks very much.
Okay. Our next, and I just made Jay our presenter, and our next guest is Jay Wind, who has been treasurer of the Friends of Arlington Parks for a number of years. We have 4 bond issues, and the only 2 that seem to be politically engaged are the school bond campaign, and we met with the chairs of that organization last month. And so we invited Jay to be with us this month. So I give the floor to Jay, and he should have at the bottom of the screen a icon that says screen. If he clicks on that, he can share his screens with us.
I see at the button share.
Yeah, okay, click on that. And then yeah, there you are. Oh, wow, look at that. We
I've
can
got a lot of screens.
intimate, confidential
I believe this is the right screen.
Yes, that's fine.
By way of background, I've been the chair of the bond issue campaign for Parks and Recreation every 2 years since 1991. And only in 1997 was it opposed. And that was just because the Republican Committee needed something to do. And the bond issues started out much larger in the early years. And then as Arlington's parks, as envisioned by the Open Spaces Master Plan, and then replaced by the Public Spaces Master Plan, as those plans became complete, the amounts that were allocated to Parks and Recreation diminished, and they now focus on a very specific set of projects. And the 6.8 million, which I believe is less than 1% of the county's budget, is that about right? County's budget is about 1.2 billion. Anyhow, there's 5 million in there for the Bluemont Tennis Court Complex, which is a misnomer because it includes baseball, softball, running trail, and a community garden. And there's a million for Arlington's trail and bridge modernization, which Rich Viola and I have worked on for many, many years. there are a great many bad spots and hazardous spots along the trail. And the trail is part of a major transportation route that starts way out in Fairfax and Loudoun County and comes across the WNOD Trail, the new bridge over Lee Highway, of which, by the way, I was the first person to cross on foot, and then the feeder trails into Arlington, the one to South Arlington that goes through Barcroft Park, and the one that goes to Roslyn, the Custis Trail. And then you can cross Key Bridge, go into DC, and commute on the Scioto Canal towpath if you don't mind gravel, or the Capitol Crescent Trail up to Bethesda, or you can turn right crossing Lynn Street at the light and take the Mount Vernon Trail all the way to Old Town, all the way to DCA, Old Town Alexandria, and Mount Vernon. And it's wonderful to be part of a trail system that actually goes about 75 miles if you add it all up. And to get to Dulles Airport, you get off the WNOD Trail and you're on Route 28 for about 3 miles, but it's all, there's a bike trail access. So I've ridden or run all of that, and the unsafe portions will be fixed with this bond issue. But let's go back to.
The point is that we're only spending money inside Arlington. The Regional Parks Authority is a different financing scheme.
Yeah, the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority owns and manages the WNOD trail.
But we're only talking about the Arlington part, folks, okay?
That's right. Well, there's a joint jurisdiction where the WNOD trail starts at Van Buren Street and goes down to Shirlington. And then it bifurcates at Bon Air Park, and it ceases to be WNOD and simply becomes the Custis Trail, and that goes to Roslyn. So
okay, but the point is we're talking about the bond issue and how the money will be spent.
Right. There's I researched and tried to find specifics, and I talked with Susan Kalish this morning, and her answer is it's to repair bad spots. And there are a number of bad spots, including where there's been some flooding and some erosion. So it's $1 million of a purse that will enable the county board to allocate for spot remodeling, renovation, modernization, and improvements to some of the bridges that get overtopped by water and flooding, specifically the one under Columbia Pike, where sadly there was a fatality last year when somebody went down the hill too fast and fell into the creek. So there's safety, there's markings, there's emergency response opportunities like the trail markers, and all of those go under one umbrella called the Trail and Bridge Modernization. Now, the $5 million for the boathouse $5 million for the tennis court. Let me see if I can shift screens to that. It's envisioned by the Public Spaces Master Plan. Let me go up one screen. The Upper Bluemont conceptual project was proceeding very fast in its conceptual phase, and then due to COVID, the community planning process was interrupted. So this is an outline of Bluemont. Now, can I think if I reduce my screen a little bit, yeah, now you can see the element of the slideshow to the right. So this is the outline of the Bluemont Park area. The tennis courts are it's not true north or true east. The tennis courts are to the right, but that's northerly. And the community gardens and the baseball fields are to the south. So south is to the left and north is
No,
to the
south
right.
is to the right. South is to the right.
But then where's the picnic shelter? Oh, is the picnic shelter up
Yellow
here?
square. The yellow square.
Okay, thank you. So Wilson Boulevard is over here.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you. I was disoriented. So right now there's a lot of reforestation going on south of the shelter between there and the tennis courts, and they will be modernized and updated based on the outcome of the community process. Now, the community process began at Ashland School with various conceptual designs. This is what it looks like currently. And by the way, you see up here where there's some spaces where the roof leaks. Come on back. And this is what it looks like from the west. Yes. So all of that is subject to modernization under the $5.0 million. And the tennis courts are functional, but there are opportunities for improvement, and that's one of the central parks of Arlington. It's where a lot of people recreate and they go to play, and play is as important as work. Here's another shot of the tennis courts as is, and here's a shot of the trail. Oop, let me go back one. And I want to point out, now Bob and I run a lot on the trail. There's cracks, there's roots, there's root damage, there's potholes, and erosion and siltation. And if that could be leveled off, all of this, which is used by perhaps 1 million people a year, 1 million individuals, it would become much safer and much more part of the thoroughfare that is the Arlington Parks system. So this is the good shot that I wanted to share with you that shows the cracks in the pavement. And then down here, as we approach the parking lot at the south end, there's a huge pothole. And I'm looking forward to getting that paved at some point. So
The other point is that the tennis courts are used by a lot of the schools. So we have school PE classes coming here to play tennis.
yes, let me go back one. So this is a common use facility, and there's a resource protection area all around, and it's very nice to know, come back here, that one area is a designated pollinator garden, and to some extent the area is being restored to its formerly natural state. And there we go. Now, the community engagement process started in June of 2019, and with an information booth at the county fair. And then they had the community kickoff meeting that you saw in October, and then a second community meeting, and then a third, and then COVID struck, and the community planning process was postponed for more than a year. And it will pick up again once people feel that it's safe to proceed. And all of this is conceived in the public spaces master plan. And you can drill down to the multiple processes and multiple projects. This was approved in 2019, and it does have pages about Bluemont Park and pages about the bike trails that are up for modernization.
Right.
So I'm a frequent user of the trails. I'm a true believer. Everything that I've done over the past 30 years has been for the betterment of the parks in Arlington, and I hope that you feel the same way.
Do you want to talk just 1 minute about the 800,000 for the boathouse?
Oh, yeah, oh boy, that I have mixed feelings about, not because I care one way or the other, but because it's been controversial. There are multiple concepts of how the boathouse could be built. One would be a landing in the natural area. Let me pull up a GMAP. Let me make a GMAP from scratch here. You're still on my screen, right?
Your screen is still on our screens.
Okay. Let me go to
You won't be able to call up Lee Highway very much more in the future.
yeah, there is that. Now, oh, that's interesting. It didn't. Okay. Where am I? Am I not in Arlington?
You're in Rothland, but you have to move more to the right to get to the boathouse.
Okay. I have to move way, way, way to the right. Let me try a different address. Okay. Now, right here at the edge of
Key Bridge and the
Key
Parkway.
Bridge, at the Virginia end of Key Bridge, there's the Custis Trail continues and goes down to the Mount Vernon Trail. And there's a very strange little green space here with access for utility vehicles. And one of the proposals is to take that green space and build a bridge that would go over here. Start and go over to here. And let me undo that and do a manually straight lines. And go over to here, put the boathouse here, and have a pier that goes out into the Potomac River. And there are compelling reasons in both directions. One is that pointed out by the very, very wise, although occasionally questionable, Bernie Byrne, that this is one of the last absolutely natural, untouched green spaces in all of Arlington. And to put a bridge over the George Washington Memorial Parkway from here to there would essentially destroy one of the last completely natural spaces. And to be honest, given that I run this way a lot, I really understand where he's coming from. Now, in a bill that went before Congress about 20 years ago, Congressman Jim Moran put in an allocation of, I believe, $1 million for a boathouse somewhere theoretically on this side. So one could alternatively put a boathouse in this area. Let me see. And it could have a pier that, well, I don't know if it'll allow me to do that. And then it would be accessible only from northbound George Washington Memorial Park. Yeah, northbound George Washington Memorial Parkway. But that's okay, because the same is true for the Theodore Roosevelt Island. It is only accessible from the northbound GW Parkway. And similarly, another proposal was that there was Theodore Roosevelt Island was originally owned by the George Mason family, and there's a little tiny paved remnant of the Mason property right here. And if this bridge was developed so that it could take automobiles, then either a side road or something that could enable people to use the Theodore Roosevelt Island for a launching pad for boats is another possibility. Or there could be a pier here where they take their boat across, and then they unload supplies here and then go out into the Potomac. Now,
But to sort of summarize, the $800,000 is sort of planning money. So we're not committing to any alternative. We're just going to spend more money on planning at this phase.
that's exactly
The
right.
other thing that I think we ought to point out is that our previous bond issues park band issues were very high because we were trying to fund the aquatic center, and this is sort of our post-aquatic center funding request. So they are much lower than the previous ones, because the aquatic center was very expensive. Does anybody in the audience have a question for Jay?
Thank you. It has been a pleasure to present today.
Thank you for joining us, Jay. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate all of you joining with us in our monthly lunch. Our next one will be the second Tuesday in November, 1 week after Election Day. I want you to all focus on the first Tuesday, and we'll see you on November 9th. Again, thank you for attending.
Thanks, Bob.